Welcome to Pagan Coffee Talk. If you enjoy our content, please consider donating and following our socials.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, I thought you've been having some issues here lately with your arthritis.
Yes.
And the last ritual that we had, you unfortunately were not able to assist in the casting.
No.
So I thought we would talk a little bit about what it means when
You become a priest of a certain age.
Yes. So, like, what are the kinds of things that run through your head at this time?
Well, I'm sorry. I've been performing ritual for how long?
Well over 30 years.
So, I mean, you sort of get used to doing it. When you can, it's not, I don't know. It's just, you can't do it. There's a little bit, you feel a little lost there. But yeah, when you start getting to the point where how can I put this? Our elder community is elders. We are getting sort of
right,
battered and bruised, and
which happens with age.
And again, moving around isn't that easy anymore. So yeah, casting a circle is not the most easiest thing to do when you get to a certain age. But the problem is when you're sitting there and everybody in temple being nice and trying to help you, but you're still wanting to do. You know what I mean? And
so how do you deal with that mentally?
It's a little hard. I mean, considering during the last Sabbath, all right, during Yule, I'm sitting there and I'm hurting, and one of my first degrees walk up to me. She's with a cane herself,
right?
Going, "Hey, can I do anything with you?" What?
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't want the lady with the cane having to help the old man
with the cane.
With the cane. I mean, this is back to the blind leading the blind.
Right.
It is a little hurtful to the ego, though, to be that one to have to sit there and wait for someone to bring you your plate of food because, well, just milling around everybody in the kitchen is a little difficult.
So what kinds of things do you do to help you deal with that?
Really not much to do. Either you deal with it or you don't. I mean,
I know there's little things that you can do, like delegating,
well,
and things like that. But even then,
most priests and priestesses, I think, are dealing with the same thing I am: the feeling of being useless.
Right.
Inside, because you can't do. I mean,
which again, there's not much you can do about that.
No, I mean, especially when you're being propped up onto a little seat because you can't stand in ritual long enough sometimes.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing or anything. The first degrees they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Again, the majority of the psychological issues are me. you with
me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not them. They're being nice and loving and all that, but there's a part of you that still wants to do. You sort of miss casting circle.
So I think this kind of ties into when do we know when to step down? When do we know when to pass that torch on
to somebody
else and just sit back and enjoy it?
Or are we going to be like certain other religions and just sit here and keep on getting older and older and more decrepit and not give up that power, that authority,
right,
to the next generation? I
mean, because this is a very real thing that
is going on.
Everybody's going to go through it at some point.
I've commented on the podcast before. Every time we're teaching, every time we're doing things like this, we're always looking for our replacements.
Right.
Is what we should be doing.
Right, but it's that letting go.
It's that letting go. And again, all of Lord Men had this problem.
Oh, did he ever? Yeah.
Every elder I've met that's put blood, sweat, and tears into getting their temple started and now all like that, they don't want to let go.
Well, no, it's their baby.
It's their baby. And I can understand that to a certain extent. You've worked years to get this done but at some point, we physically have to let it go.
Right, but that doesn't mean that you have to completely separate yourself, though.
No.
You can still be an active part.
It's just you're taking more of a advisory or a teaching and less active.
Right.
You know, the problem comes is when you are still young enough to be active, but yet have physical limitations put on you.
Right.
You know, it becomes a little bit harder. All right. You know, and especially as the older you get and the more slower you get on things. You know, I remember a lot of times sitting there like, you know, Lord, men being visibly upset to have to look at me going, okay, you're younger. I need you to cast circle so I can just stand behind the altar instead.
Right.
You know, you start seeing us let go because we just have to. You know, there's more and more times where we're going to ritual and I'm not performing ritual. I'm having to look at the lady going, you need to pick somebody else.
Right. You're either doing it by yourself tonight,
right?
Or you need to pick somebody.
Or you need to pick somebody. You know, I'll do what I can when I can, and I normally do. But, I mean, it's happening more and more.
Right.
You know, and I'm not trying to put out anybody's business, but, you know, I'm sorry, the lady's not much younger than me.
No, she's got a few years
on her.
Yeah.
And I'm not, you know, and she has her issues too. So, I mean, it's not like this is a one-way thing here either, you know.
No, absolutely not.
You know, she's going through the same things.
Right, and the older she gets, she's gonna see that what you're going through is what she's gonna be going through, and
again, we're having to deal with this. We're having to, and again, for us elders, having to deal with crossing that barrier, getting across that, and not feel jaded or hurt or left behind. And I think that's part of the thing. There is, when you get to a certain age, you feel like if you can't do, they're just going to leave you behind. They're going to stick you in a corner, and you're going to become that dusty that nobody ever talks to.
Right.
And I think that's part of the fear there, is that this is what's going to happen, and not that you just can't do or interact. It's just people are going to sort of forget about you.
I think that's a legitimate fear. I really do. Especially for if you've been someone who, like you, who's been super active, always there. You're teaching all the classes. You're conversing with guests that come in. You've always been very vocal,
right?
And I can see how you would feel that way.
Yeah, like,
oh God, I can't do this. I can't do this or this anymore. They're just going to shove me off to the side. But I don't. In our case, I really don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen. I didn't.
But
say
it is a legitimate fear.
I didn't say it was a rational fear.
No, well, not rational.
I didn't say it was rational,
but it is a legitimate fear, and
yeah.
I think that's something that we all go through the older we get, anyway.
Right.
Because I've seen it so many times growing up, where the older generations, people just shove off in a nursing home somewhere and never come see them anymore.
Never come see them.
The families just forget about them.
Right. But again, you know, like I said, growing up, when you see these older preachers that have been in power in these churches for years, and yet they really they really shouldn't be doing this, but they keep on doing it because, well, pride, ego, whatever,
right,
is getting in the way. You know, I'm sorry, you get older, your memory gets a little bit floppier, and the doctors put you on a little bit more meds than normal. And
right. Yeah, there was a preacher that I grew up with, and when Mama passed away, she wanted him to officiate the funeral. And I'm like, and when I saw him, it dawned on me how long this man has been behind the pulpit.
Yes.
And I'm like, don't you think it's about time for you to retire and just enjoy your life?
Yes. At some point.
I mean, he still gets around very well. He still speaks very well.
Well, again, I don't think we ever truly retire from the priesthood.
Well, no.
Never. At the end of the day, no, we're a priest until we die.
Right.
I mean, that's all there is to it.
When I say retire, that's where I'm like, okay, maybe it's time to go back to just being a participant in ritual.
Right.
And letting someone else do the casting, do the presentation,
Right.
do all of that stuff. And you go back to just enjoying it.
Enjoying it. All right. Well, don't get me wrong. Why, there are wonderful times in which I have been in ritual where, no, because of physical limitations, I couldn't, and ritual, and it was beautiful, and it was nice, and I got to experience in a way I haven't gotten to experience in years.
Right.
There's still a part of me that's kind of like,
of course there is.
I still want to put my hands in the soup.
Needs a little more flavor.
It needs a little bit more flavor. You need one more shelf. But again, it is something we need. There is things that we need to deal with, just like the other side. All right, on this. All right,
right.
You know, while I'm sitting here going, okay, you know, y'all need to be a little bit more sensitive, and maybe sometimes allow us to try to do stuff or whatever, and. Then when we fail miserably, go, okay, fine, whatever.
Or look at us and say, I told you so.
You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. It is a bruise to the ego when that happens. But sometimes I think some of us need to do that. Some of us need to. Because, again, the strange thing is when you get older, sometimes you can do that task. Sometimes you can't do that task. And it really just depends on this plethora of random things going on in your life.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how else to explain that between the weather and...
I was going to say, it's almost like your joints and your body just has a mind of its own at that point. And it's like, today, we're just going to inflame everything.
Oh, yeah, you know. You know, Mother Nature's kind of like, you know, remember all them years you fucked with me?
Right. Well, fuck you, because here it comes.
Remember all them spells you cast?
Right.
This is the backlash. This right here is the backlash.
Quite possibly, yeah. Quite possibly. Wouldn't put it past her, for sure.
You know.
Well, I think on the other side of this, too, what the young ones, as we call them, the first degrees, the second degrees, those who are coming up to be the replacements.
Right.
They need, in my opinion, they need to start spending more time with the elders. They need to make sure they've learned all they can.
That philosophy, that logic, that
right
wisdom. So you don't have to spend more time learning something we've already know.
Right. But they also need to understand that eventually they're going to be in the same place.
Yep.
So at the same time, they should start looking for their replacements.
Yes.
And you have to realize that this becomes the cycle.
Right. It's always about the kiddies.
It's always about the kiddies.
It's always about the kiddies. It's not about us. And again, this is a hard pill to swallow, and it gets worse when you do have those physical limitations and stuff like that.
Sure.
You know, I would love to hear some more elders and stuff on this topic. How are y'all dealing with this? You know,
right. What are some ways that y'all are combating the mental fatigue of getting older?
Right. In ritual and doing this thing and not being able to do as much. And yes, even having to refer back to your notes more when you're doing classes than you used to. And it's small things.
Yeah.
But again, after a while, they do pile up. You do notice. You know, some people don't. You know, it's the whole glasses thing.
Sure, yeah.
You never actually realize that your prescription's changed until you go 2 years later to go get your eyes examined, and they go, like, well, guess what?
Like, oh, maybe that's why that was just a tad bit blurry.
And yes, sometimes elders have to be pulled off to the side by other elders who go, no, you're done. All right? I mean, elders have to learn how to give up that power, how to give up that control, and fall more into that advisory position. And again, I'm not going to say it's easy, but
no.
It's something we need to start. I think we need to start a conversation about in the community.
Well, and I think some ways, at least one way that we can help combat some of that is when you are younger and you're training those that are coming up you allow them, well, I mean, you have to allow them to do it anyway, but give them more and more opportunities to do ritual, to perform that.
Ritual.
I mean, they need to practice anyway.
Yes.
They need to get familiar with the elements. They need to get familiar with the deities.
They need to get comfortable performing ritual as if it's secondhand.
Right. But I see that also as a tool to help the elders, the third degrees.
But back to what you were saying, even to the elders, y'all need to start letting these people, your first degrees, and conduct ritual. They're
Absolutely.
not going to become better at it by just standing there watching you.
No, they're not.
All right? While watching and observing does help on the teaching scale, it's not the full puzzle of the picture.
No, it's not. And we've said it time and time before. What we're doing is we are not creating followers.
No.
We are creating priests and priestesses.
We are creating we are trying our best to create spiritual leaders.
Yes.
Not just minions,
Right.
one right after another that's just going to follow orders.
No, that's not what we want.
We don't want blind faith.
No.
We want questioning faith.
Exactly. Yep. And ultimately that's the goal.
Yes.
But the other part of that goal is keeping your tradition going, keeping the craft going.
Yes, in and of itself. I mean, there's a difference of changing things just to change things.
Right.
Versus changing things because they need to be changed. All right? I mean, it's kind of like the commercial I've been seeing on TV, and it's driving me up the wall. Well, what's new about the phone? Who cares?
Right. There's an update. Well, what's new? Well,
who cares?
Who cares? It's an update. Just do it.
Just do it. And I'm back to, no, I'm done.
Right.
I'm done of the whole, consume product, get excited for a next product, and it never ends. So again, we're trying to do things differently. We're trying to see things differently. We're trying to move forward. All right. And there are things that we have to deal with as elders of the community.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that we need to deal with. We're not done learning.
Oh, God, no.
This is another lesson we have to learn, and we're going to have to deal with first degrees and younger people and jealousies and aggravations, because that's not the way I'll do it, or when it's not our ritual.
Right.
While at the same time, like you said, maintaining those traditions, it is a difficult thing. And it is a conversation we need to start having in the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to have more people coming together to discuss these things.
I mean, it's not an easy transition for, especially after you've done it for so many years, of priests and priestesses giving up that power and moving on.
Well, maybe that's not such a bad idea. You know what? If you're in the Charlotte area and you're listening and you're an elder, get in contact with us. Let's get together. Let's just talk about things that elders need to talk about.
Yeah. I mean,
things like this.
Life changes for you when, you're 50-something and you've had your first heart attack.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, again.
Or you've had a stroke or anything.
Anything. Life completely changes for you in your viewpoint of this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't see any discussions on this. I know the bulk of craft is always concerned about the next generation.
Right.
I mean, we just talked about that. But we do need to take some time to look at our elders.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do they need? Because there's a lot of us. Lady Santana took a vow of poverty and the whole 9 yards to keep her temple going.
Yep, she sure did.
For crying out loud, I know not everybody can do that, but these are sacrifices these people have made, and sometimes we have a bad habit of throwing our elders off to the side.
Yep.
So again, I don't know. Is this part of the culture in the pagan communities?
It may be, but I think it's something we can change.
Is this a leftover philosophy from previous generations? Sort of the way they did it in tribal days, because once you got to the point to where you could not produce yourself, some people would often go into the mountains and during the coldest night and just not show back up. In the olden days.
Could have been. I mean, it could be a carryover from that.
Yeah.
But I still think it's something that we can change. Like I said, and I mean, it's not a bad idea. No matter where you are, where you're listening, get in touch with some of the elders in your community.
Because it's a little funny how we treat elders, because we sort of treat them like they're throwaways, but then we also want to deify them at the same time.
I know, right? It's like, where did that come from?
Where did this come from? What I don't understand
the duality there.
The duality there.
They kind of contradict each other,
right?
Just a little bit.
Just a little.
More like a country mile, but you know.
I mean, that's just my view. I could be completely wrong there, but you know, that's sort of what I see. Again, not speaking bad of anybody. It's just what I see going on. I don't think any of the younger people are sitting there purposely going, well, we just don't like Elder Bob, so fuck him. We're just not going to. I don't think that's what it is. I just think life and temple and activities get in there. And
yeah, well, and I think some of it is the elders themselves.
Yeah.
They're the ones they're being more like the cats. And typically when cats are in their last days, they will go off into the woods and just never come back.
Or isolate themselves away from everybody else. Because again,
you don't want to be that burden.
Again, you have different thoughts there. Either you feel like a burden, or you get aggravated because you would rather do yourself, but you can't.
Right.
So, I mean, again, there's a lot of things going on there, and dealing with elders, it can be a little temperamental. Because, I mean, I remember seeing this with Lord Men and me having to deal with him, trying my best to get him to kind of...
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there were certain times he would want to run a mile ahead of you, and you'd be like, oh, my God, stop.
Oh, I know. I mean, the man had some energy for sure, but, you know.
Yeah. But at the same time, there were times he just could not.
No, he had the physical limitations. You know. We didn't call him Robo Priest for nothing. Because sometimes he just seemed like a robot. He just never stopped.
Never stopped. So I can't think of anything else.
I can't either. Like I said, though, I think it's something that we can change. I just think we need to come together as a community and do it.
Now, we'll say this. For all the younger ones dealing with the elders, be patient with us.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know, if we get aggravated or slightly grouchy or whatever, or seem a little irritated, it might not be you. It might just be the situation, and you just happen to be the one to highlight that situation.
Think of it more like your grandparents. The grandparents are going to, get a little moody every once in a while, but you got to deal with them because they're family and you love them. We're all going to be kind of the same way.
Just to let you know. I mean, just to remind people, we're just as like y'all. We're still learning and moving through this stuff.
Absolutely.
So,
let's get some more coffee.
All right.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week for another episode. Pagan Coffee Talk is brought to you by Life Temple and Seminary. Please visit us at lifetempleseminary.org for more information, as well as links to our social media: Facebook, Discord, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit.
We travel down this trodden path, a maze of stone and mire. Just hold my hand as we pass by a sea of blazing pyres. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning breaks. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning breaks.